to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we have a prayer, our chaplain.
Gracious Father God, we come before your presence, thanking you for this great day that you've given us. We pray, God, as we come before you in business, we ask that each individual that is coming forth, God, will speak their hearts and speak that which is candid of their visions and the things in which they're planning to do. And so, God, we give you praise, glory, and honor in Jesus' name. Thank God. Amen.
Amen. We'll all be seated and let's get this show on the road. Okay, once we use the microphone. We're streaming live, right? Is that on button? Okay. What's that? The button on the microphone? Here we go. Again. I just want to thank everyone for being here. This is very important because people have to know what's going on in our government. I want to thank the great people of the Veterans in Politics, Steve Sanson, for putting this on, and a group of fine young men and women that have served our country. Panel, would you guys like to introduce yourself to everyone? Let's start with the ladies first.
Oh, is there more than one? What are you saying?
I hope not.
I am Mantis, Toboggan, the co-host of the radio show. I don't know if that's
I'm Robert Foust. I've lived in Las Vegas since 1985. I'm a professional baseball player and coach, and I also served in the U.S. Army.
Andre Haynes, founder and president of EMG, and also Southern Nevada Auxiliary Director of Veterans in Politics International.
My name is Rob Lauer. I was an MP in the U.S. Army. I'm a journalist. Just for the record, I will not be voting today as a reporter, but I am here just asking questions at your day.
My name is Michael McDonald. I've been doing IT for over 15 years. Used to work for the city of Las Vegas. I am part of the VIPI Legislative Council. Also working on family and criminal law reform, and look forward to asking good questions.
I'm John Moore, former Nevada Assemblyman. I was elected in 2014. I've lived here since 2006, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I okay with the microphone down, or I need to pick it up? Good? Okay.
Is it turned on?
No, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it's turned on.
It's turned on? Okay.
Okay, so we're going to open a bit. We're going to have the judge go ahead and state your name, and then what you're doing, and the office you're running for, and a little bit about yourself.
All right. My name is Victor Miller. I live in Boulder City. I've lived in Boulder City since I was 8 months old. And I am the Justice of the Peace and Municipal Judge in Boulder City. I became the municipal judge in 1984 through an appointment by the City Council. And then the Justice Court became open in 1994, and the Justice of the Peace recommended me to the County Commission, and the County Commission appointed me to that position, and I've been then for 24 years Justice of the Peace. It's a position that's different than the municipal court in that it's elected, and so I've stood for election since then and have been re-elected each time, and now I'm up again this time for this November election. I, in addition to doing those two courts, municipal court and justice court, they're both part-time, so I do half and half. Plus I also do juvenile court, and I do juveniles for not only Boulder City, Searchlight, and Laughlin, so the south part of the county, the juveniles come in and see me. Also I have a specialty court. I run an adult drug and alcohol court in Boulder City. We have 17 participants in there. We started that back in the end of 2014, and we've had 8 graduates of that program, and another graduation coming up in April 17th. It's really doing some great things to help us deal with a core of our criminal problems in the city had to do with substance abuse. So if we can deal with the substance abuse, we can make the city a better place. Save some money for the city too, as far as incarceration costs, in crime costs, but it also changes lives of the participants. They come out of the program as productive citizens with jobs, place to live, reunited with their families. It's quite an amazing thing.
Thank you, Judge. Is there somebody running against you in your race?
Yes, this is actually the first time in 24 years that someone has run against me, and so I do have an opponent this time.
And just for the record, we did invite them and they did not show up. So just to be fair, again, we really appreciate your time being here. So with that, we flipped the coin and we designated who would go first. So guess who that would be? Mantis.
Oh, I always win.
You want to see that coin, don't you?
Yeah. How many sides does that coin have?
I don't know. I think it was 3.
Okay. Would you say that incarceration is effective with drug offenders?
No, they go in with a substance abuse or problem or an addiction, and they come out with it. It doesn't help them with the root cause of what brought them into the judicial system first. So if we can provide them the tools that they need to get over their addiction, through their addiction and into recovery, then they have the tools when they're done with our program to continue a productive life.
Okay, and what are you most proud of as far as your Justice of the Peace career?
Well, you know, we've made things more efficient in the court, so that we also, in justice court, in addition to criminal cases, we do civil cases, we do protective orders, and since the last 4 years, I've been full-time. Before then, I practiced law and did these judges, but it got busy where that just wasn't possible, and the city arranged a way that we could have it full-time. So now, if somebody comes in and needs an eviction, or somebody comes in and needs a protective order, someone comes in with an emergency order, I'm there when the court's open, I can take care of it, so things are much more efficient, I think, really in our court than probably any other justice court in Clark County, because we don't have an overwhelming caseload in that we're behind just because of the caseload, and so the judge is available right now to get things done. So that's the drug court's a big thing. It's a joint court between the municipal court and the justice court. Participants come from both courts. They're brought there from the district attorney or from the city prosecutor. That's something I'm really proud of, what we've been able to do for these people and for the community that way. So that would be 2 things that I can say that we're proud of in the justice court. Before and the other thing, the juvenile court is through the justice court as well. And so what we've been able to do there with children, I was amazing when I took over. Judge Steele asked me to do that for that part of the county, and when I took over, I'd been dealing with adults for a couple of decades, and adults are pretty much set in their ways. But with the kids, I found that in a 6-month period, I could take them from failing grades to B's and A's. I could get them back involved with their parents, and you know, kids are more malleable, and that's a great thing too, to see what we can do with the children and get them to come out of that program being as productive citizens well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any new challenges facing defendants in your courtroom? And if so, how will you address them?
Well, one of the problems that people have is the substance abuse, and that seems to be with the opioid epidemic. That's a real problem, and so we're addressing that and the things that go along with that, homelessness. So we've gotten some assistance with finding people housing. The other is employment. We have a partnership with the One Stop Job Connect Center in Boulder City, who they attend our court sessions and help pick, direct people in there so that they can be, not only find a job, but they can be trained and get a career. I have one gentleman who couch surfed for years and years and was in and out of court, and we got him through that program a training to be a air conditioning and heating certified technician. And when he got done with the program, he was the lead man on a shift. So there's a difference for him and his children. So.
Thank you.
Where do you stand on the transgender issues with bathrooms?
Well, we have a men's and a women's bathroom in the courthouse, and we don't have any plans of changing that. Frankly, I think we're designed male or female, and we're born that way, and so that's the way we're set up to use the restroom. So I don't see any reason why we should deviate from our anatomy.
Judge, Assemblyman John Lauer, do you think it's appropriate to issue gag orders to attorneys that are before you for reasons that they're participating in the political process with political speech? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think they have a First Amendment right to exercise their First Amendment. So political speech is one thing. Things about the case or about the parties of the case are a different thing. And unfortunately, that is something that's pending right now, so I really can't comment any further on that.
Okay. Thank you.
But
So Judge, I know you have some difficult cases that you deal with on a daily basis. When dealing with litigants and dealing with people that are going through those troubling and emotional times, people make mistakes. But would you more err on the side of grace and mercy, or or going and discipline of that?
When dealing with litigants.
Well, each case is individual. There are individuals that appear in front of me, and so each one needs to be addressed individually. So if there's an opportunity where I see a problem and we can cure the problem, and then we won't ever have to see that person again, then we can address that. So if someone has a substance abuse, for example, problem, or they have an anger problem, or what brought them in, what precipitated the crime that brings them in, if we can address that underlying issue, then we won't have to see them again. There are people that don't want to address their underlying issues, and I can only give them that opportunity through the system. If they don't want to address it, then we have the opportunity. Traditionally, when I started being a judge, I only had two options: assess a fine or put them in jail. And now, through some help from the legislature, in as far as jurisdiction and the as our community has grown, there's been more services available, so we can offer that. But the traditional modes of dealing with people who come in front of me are still available, and I still use those. We still put people in jail. Sometimes it's just best to have them out of the community for a while.
Do you believe that it's better to work on the way of reformation or punishment for different criminals, or maybe a 3 strikes? And what do you think about the 3 strikes?
Well, 3 strikes, I think that goes back to what I was talking about. There's some people that don't want to change or don't want to help. They don't want to conform to society's norms, and because they're not conforming, I mean, there's a lot of ways I don't conform. We all have ways we don't conform, but if the way we don't conform is by committing crimes which deal with other people's safety or their property, and then we need to deal with that. And that's the 3 strikes is, basically, we need to get you out of the community because you're not helping the community, you're harming the community. You've shown that your tendency is to commit crimes, and crimes hurt people and they hurt their property. So, when I was in law school in California, I worked in the district attorney's office there and worked in what we called career criminals. This was before they had the 3 strikes law. And, but career criminals were people who had 3 crimes that were, where we could see that they were earning their money from being criminals. So it was burglaries, it was robberies, primarily insurance fraud. These people are not going to benefit, we can see through the typical process. So our purpose in the career criminals division was to warehouse these people. It's just, let's put them away, out of society, and keep society safe as long as we could.
But do you believe that that's the best route, and that increases the recidivism rate out here, which is, it keeps our jails and prisons full? Or is there, would you err on the side of putting in programs and things that, do you believe that people can actually change and reform themselves?
I think people can. I've seen people change. And I've seen people who won't or can't. So if they can change, then let's facilitate that so that they come out better people and society is protected that way, as opposed to spending money to put them in jail. Boulder City doesn't have a jail, so we rent space in Henderson, and the Henderson jail, or Las Vegas, the Regional Justice Center, and Mesquite. We have lots of contracts. But it was up, and one of the city councilmen made the comment that when he looked and it was $140 a day to house a prisoner, he said, my wife and I just went on a cruise and it was $75 a day for each person. So why can't we just get a contract with a cruise company and send them on a cruise? So, it's an expensive, putting people in jail is an expensive proposition.
Yeah, and it also increases the amount of society's issues that happen. And you don't understand that there's a devastating effect of when people get locked up, they're missing out on their families, their children, or being productive members of society. So another question, Judge, I would like to ask is when vetting protective orders, you've heard of the silver bullet in custody matters, where how do you vet whether it's a legitimate claim or when granting these orders, or do you actually look at all the meritorious things that's on that application, and what percentage do you think is usually granted?
Probably 80% are granted. You look really, well, let me take that back, because I get a fair amount where it's just people arguing. The threat is he's threatening to sue me, or he's threatening to walk his dog back and forth in front of my house, and those are not what the statute was intended for. The statute, both the domestic violence, protective orders against domestic violence, and the protective orders against stalking and harassment, all deal with physical bodily harm. And so that's one of the things is someone actually threatening physical bodily harm, and is there the opportunity to do it. If somebody's from Virginia and they called and said, I'm coming over to your house tonight to get you, that's really not something that is going to actually happen. So one of the things I talked about, having the judge there full time, I can actually call a hearing within a week to get the parties in, so I can, if it looks a little funny, that, is this really, is this person really afraid, or they just want the court to expedite a breakup? I don't want to tell them I don't want to see them anymore, but if the court does it, then, or are the neighbors really in such a a state to where somebody could be in danger, then maybe we can get them in, if I'm not sure about it, I can get both parties in and kind of gauge it when I can see both sides. Because the problem that we have, I think, often with the protective orders is they're ex parte. They come in and all I have is one side. So sometimes it's better to get both sides as quickly as I can, so that we don't have the problems of, because there's ramifications to have a protective order against you. It's in the computer. You lose the opportunities to some constitutional rights like possessing a firearm and things. So it's a serious thing, and so sometimes you need to make sure everybody's heard before you start imposing those things.
And one more question for you, Judge. Oh, sorry, I didn't like that.
I was gonna, there's only one question.
So, right now in the news right now, obviously there's a lot of talk about stripping 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds of their rights to own a firearm, to purchase a firearm or rifle. Should they be treated as second-class citizens? As a soldier, we lived with thousands of 18-year-olds who served their country with honor, and is it right, lawfully, constitutionally, to make someone a second-class citizen?
Well, we already do that for handguns.
Well,
Yeah,
that is an issue too, right?
Right.
Is that constitutional?
Is it constitutional
Yeah.
to what, you're talking about
To
the
limit
current.
someone's right to own a gun
Yeah.
who's 18 years old, they're an adult, they can vote, they're supposed to be afforded all the constitutional rights of any adult. If it was a race, it would be considered horrible, we changed that in the law. If it's over 65, you can't do that, right? There's a lot of people who talk about limiting driver's rights if you're over 65. So why is this group allowed to be discriminated against?
Well, if you're 18, 19, 20-year-old, you can be in the military where they give you a gun. If you're 18, 19, 20 years old and you can get a hunting license. It's not a kid license where you have to be with an adult. So you can go out. So we're going to say, well, you can have a hunting license, but you can't go out and use it.
You can own property, you can be married, you can have an abortion, you can do all those things at 18.
No, I agree. I remember I was in high school at the time that the change in the voting age happened, and I remember the issue was, hey, if I'm going to be drafted, I should be able to have the opportunity to vote and have input into the political system. And frankly, I think that's the same as far as having the opportunity to protect yourself under the Second Amendment.
Is there a constitutional right to defend yourself? That's the main question, I think. Is there a
Yes.
constitutional right to defend yourself?
Yes. I think that's pretty good. The Supreme Court's upheld it.
With the gun, with the firearm.
That was
Thank
a
you.
problem in Washington DC in the case that went to the Supreme Court. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you bet.
Do you handle a lot of domestic violence cases?
Yeah, a fair amount, yes.
And how do you address escalation of violence? Like if somebody was brought into a domestic violence situation, how do you address that person getting angrier and returning to their family?
Well, and that's one of the questions I talked about. We rent space, so, I have to consider, about putting people in jail, what's the cost of it?
Exactly.
But that's just one factor, and the big factor is safety. So there is, and luckily, being both judges, the municipal judge and the justice of the peace, like the protective orders come in through justice court, the domestic battery cases come in through municipal court. So I have the opportunity to know that, yeah, that victim has come in and got a protective order. So before I let somebody out of jail, pending their plea and all that, I can make sure that they've got a place to go. Who are you gonna go with? I'll ask them that. where are you gonna stay? There's a protective order, you can't go over there, where are you gonna stay? And then, well, my dad says I can come live with him. Okay, where's your dad live? He lives over in Las Vegas. Okay, can your dad confirm that for me, that you will be staying over there? And then you won't have a need to come to Boulder City other than court, right? Yes, okay. So you have to deal with kind of the logistics of keeping everybody safe, but at the same time, understanding that there's a presumption of innocence until actually we come in and they enter a plea or there's a trial. I'm on a committee with the Supreme Court, I think it was something piqued I should mention this earlier, for pretrial justice and releasing pretrial justice. The studies show that if somebody is held in jail for 3 days because they don't have the funds to post bail, they lose their job, they lose their place to live, and often they lose their family relationships. And they're presumed to be innocent at the time. So we're trying to develop some ways to assess people as to whether they need to be in jail or don't need to be in jail. There's probably about 15% that need to be, is what the studies show, but 85% of people that are arrested.
Did you say 50 or 15?
15, one thing.
Okay.
You know, but the other 85, they show that they come to court and they don't reoffend. So why are we holding them in jail because they can't afford to post a, you know, $2,500 bail? Then that's just justice is for only those who have money, and that's not what our justice system's about. So, but we need to assess and make sure we find those 15 to protect the society from them. So that's what we're working on in the committee, to try and find some risk assessment tools that will help us do that as judges.
So Judge, based off of that, the Eighth Amendment protects us against excessive fines and putting that, what is your stance on bail amounts, like reducing bail amounts? Because usually that was put in place to make sure that the offender supposedly would be able to come back to court. And the majority of the time, you either, if you can't afford it, you're indigent, you must stay in jail for 21 days to await trial. There should be a merit system that allows them to get out of jail and continue to work and provide for their family. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, no, absolutely. You know, just because you can't afford, what happens? You get in and you spend 21 days in jail on a crime that typically might be a 5-day jail sentence. It does a couple of things. It forces people to kind of maybe override their constitutional rights to go to trial, because it's easier. I'll just plead guilty right now, Judge, if I'm going to get out. And you know, it clogs up their jail system, and they lose their jobs. Most of these people, or maybe most of us, are you know, paycheck to paycheck people. And if you miss 21 days of work, you're out of job, and then you don't have the mortgage, and you don't have the insurance money, and all the other things that we have to pay on a monthly basis.
When a due process cause is not effective, there should be a speedy due process and keeping people out of jail instead of filling it out, in my opinion. Yeah, thank you, Judge. Sure.
Okay. Judge, I just have two quick questions, a follow-up on what he said and then a follow-up on my first question.
Sure.
Regarding the bail, that's completely within your discretion as a judge, correct?
Correct.
I mean, you can either say pay this amount or not, or whatever, to release or not release.
Right. You can do bail, and then we can do conditions.
Right.
You know, and I often will do conditions. If somebody, you know, they've got a second DUI. I don't want a third DUI. I don't want them to get killed. I don't want to get killed by them. So, you know, we'll put a scram bracelet on them where their blood alcohol is monitored constantly 24/7, and then with an email to my marshal if there's a problem. You know, if it's showing up that they've consumed alcohol, then come, you know, maybe, and we have this discussion, I have this discussion on occasion to say, maybe I can't let you out on your own release because you're putting the community in danger. And so what can we do? And so if we can work something out, we can. If not, then we're back to the bail system, and the bail now for you is $5,000. So I have to have something to assure that you're going to be, you know, good when you're out and that you'll come to court.
I understand. And a follow-up to my first question. Do your personal religious views, do they impact any decisions that you make from the bench? In other words, do you take your own personal religious views into consideration when you're rendering a decision?
Well, that's hard because that's part of it. You know, it's like, you know, if it were the color of my skin, you know,
But the separation of church and state clearly says that you cannot utilize your religious views in making a decision. It's either the law says this or the law says that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that, absolutely. You know, because, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and the law is the law.
Right.
And that's what we have to do. Do I vary from that because of my religious beliefs? No.
Okay.
That's not my job, you know, that's, and actually, my religious beliefs wouldn't let me do that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So, and if you had a religious, one of your religious leaders practicing in front of you, is that a conflict of interest potentially, or how do you handle that?
To me, it makes no difference.
Okay.
You know, I've had religious leaders of this and other denominations in front of me. It doesn't, you know, that the thing is the law, the arguments on the law, the facts are the facts, the arguments are the facts. I take the facts as I determine them and apply them to the law. That's easy. I mean, you know, there's, you know, but that's like, you know, saying, you know, there's a campaign, big campaign contributor. Is that going to make a difference? No.
Okay.
Because this is my job. I'm a neutral arbitrator. That's what I have to do, and that's what I want to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's your understanding of constitutional rights? Where do they come from? Do they come from the state? Do they come from the society? Do they come from God? Where do they come from?
This is Boy Scouts, before they can move into first class, they have to have a meeting with somebody who's a civic leader. So I often have scout troops come in and talk to them. In Boulder City, up until last year, when they got to 5th grade, they did what they called were great Americans. And they had to do a bunch of things, one of which was memorize the preamble to the Constitution. And so, and I would say, who here is a great American? And a couple of them, and I said, so you know, they have to, one of the things, they have to write the Pledge of Allegiance, correct spelling and punctuation and things like that. And but one of the, and I say, well, who knows the preamble to the Constitution? And they'll say, you know, somebody will say, how does it start? And it says, we the people. And in fact, I have it right here on my tie. We the people. That's where the government doesn't give us rights. This is what I tell them. The government doesn't give us rights. We give some power to the government to keep us safe, to keep us organized, and to frankly build us a road. But so it's, but the government doesn't give us rights. The rights are inherent in we the people.
So Judge, the 9th Amendment, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So part of that is the SCRAM program. What is your thoughts on that? A lot of people say that that's against your 4th Amendment rights to searches and seizures, and it's being used to enslave people in certain ways. Or there's just mere allegations of saying, oh, I'm afraid of that person. They throw a bracelet on them, or you're an alcoholic. They're able to circumvent their constitutional rights. What's your opinion on that?
Well, whenever I use, say, a SCRAM bracelet, it's voluntary. I give them the opportunity, in fact, they have to pay for it, you know? So it's like, you know, we can post bail, or, you know, I explain, you know, I have 2 jobs in pre-trial, to deal with whether you're going to come back to court. You live here in Boulder City, you have a job, you have family here, I believe you're gonna come back to court. But this is the second time in 3 years you've been arrested for driving while intoxicated. I have a real concern that you're going to reoffend. And so what can we do that you can assure me that this is not going to happen? One of the ways that I have is that if you'll go on, volunteer to go on a scram bracelet, then I feel secure and I don't have to have you post bail. I can monitor and make sure that you're
It's not the first time offenders, it's for
Yeah.
second and the
So you-
multiple offenders.
yeah, you're doing what you told me you would do and not reoffend. So it's voluntary.
People who've already been convicted of DUIs and they're coming back to you, you make them wear a bracelet if they wanna get out, that's
But
reasonable.
I am seeing that the scram bracelet program in a lot of cases is being used as a tool and as there are allegations, and they're ordered to put those on. And it's against Grady versus North Carolina, which was ruled unconstitutional. And it's being used as, oh, I'm afraid for my life, or and there's no allegations, no or that person drinks alcohol while they're watching my children. They throw a bracelet on her against their own will. And that's what I would just wonder, like, here, it gives a peace of mind to the court, but at what point does it violate the person's constitutional rights?
Well, and I'm aware of the case law, and that's why I make it voluntary. It's like, you know, an interesting point along those lines is, in starting in January, a breath interlock device on your vehicle is gonna be mandatory if you have a driver's license and a car and you get convicted of driving while intoxicated. So,
Judge, how do you feel that that's constitutional?
Panelists, do me a favor, 1 second. When you're asking a question, state your name before you ask those questions, please. I really appreciate it. So our people watching on YouTube or at Veterans in Politics get to know you guys better, okay? Thank you so much.
Former Assemblyman John Moore. So, given that being mandatory, how is that not a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights? Because if I did get a DUI and I'm convicted for that, paid my penalty, why then why is this interlock device? Now, what if one drink is maybe for me or for you or for someone else, may not put me in a DUI status, so then why is it mandatory that I have to submit to the will of the court because of that?
because it has to do with the driving privilege. This is a DMV thing, it's not a court thing.
But you're
So if
imposing it, right? I mean, you're enforcing that, and so this is state law, is what you're implying?
It's a state law, and the penalty for violating that is not a judicial punishment, as far as I understand, it's a DMV punishment, you lose your license, or the suspension is extended. So it's not, you know, you had 3 bad results on the interlock, I'm going to now put you in jail for 5 days, that's not.
So your contention is that driving is a privilege, not a right? Even though I pay taxes and I'm traveling from point A to point B, not for hire, it is not my right to travel in any mode that I choose?
Well, that's not the question.
No,
you
but I'm
asked
saying
me,
it all
but you're now-
kind of flows into that, though. I'm
Yeah.
saying that now I can't drive my car because it's a privilege, because I don't wanna put the interlock device on my car. So it goes it's in the big picture.
We give
Where
up
is
your
it?
right when you drink and drive and get arrested.
No, I
Not
get,
lose your rights.
I get that,
But that's what he's talking
Yeah.
about.
But-
You've already been arrested and convicted of DUI. And this is the second time you've been arrested. The community has a right to make sure that you're not getting in your car and continue to practice that pattern.
This is a forum of asking the question.
He's asked and answered.
I appreciate
He's
that.
asked and answered.
And you mentioned earlier, asked me questions about, you know, whether, you know, where I base and it's on the law as it's written, and the facts that apply, and looks like that's what it's gonna be. And that right now, driving is a privilege, and that's what and so that's what I need to go on.
Your Honor, Robert Foust, would you favor raising the blood alcohol level on DUI? Would you favor raising the blood alcohol on DUI to 1.1, 1.2, 1.5?
You know, that's
It's
really.
pretty narrow right now.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, in Utah, it went to 0.4.
That's right, you can't even go out and have a drink and have
Right.
dinner and have a drink, and then you go home and you,
Right.
and it's a mess once you get a DUI.
And those are scientific issues about when impairment occurs. Frankly, it occurs at different times with different people in my experience. I'll
Some
tell
people
you
can have
what,
one-
a bigger concern I have rather than the, you know, because we've studied the effect of alcohol since the 1930s on our abilities.
It's
the
always
concern-
biased, it's
yeah.
always a biased study.
The concern now for me, as a driver on the road, is now that we have the legalized marijuana, is there any way, how can we determine does that impair people, and how can we figure out if they're impaired? Because it's not like.
So it becomes drive at your own risk.
Yeah, because you don't have, and even in the old days, you know, I was at a judicial conference 2 weeks ago, and they were talking, in the old days, you know, the police would stop the guy and he'd roll down the window and clouds of smoke would come out and you knew. But now with the edibles, every year, the actual leaf marijuana sales of that goes down.
It's the vape too, the other day.
It's vape that is odorless.
And
and
it's
the-
much
and
more
the edibles,
potent than
yeah.
even the
So-
bad marijuana.
So that is, you know, how do you can do a blood test, but marijuana stays in your blood,
Right.
in your fat cells, and you can have a high level and not be.
Everybody has a different tolerance. That's my point with alcohol, and that's why I'm saying. So you would favor maybe raising the limit?
I would leave that up to the scientific experts, you know. As a practical matter, I don't see very many .08s.
Andre might have 2 beers and he might not be able to drive. I might have a case of beer and I can drive fine.
Mhm.
And what's the problem?
Right.
There's no accident, there's no property damage, there's nothing except for you got pulled over and the only thing you really did was you're drunk.
So mostly what I see are cases where there's a driving pattern that has called attention to the individual. So,
Right.
you know, and then they get out and they have to hold on to the car. This is the testimony I'm getting. They have to hold on to the car to get out and get back to.
Right.
And.
But people have health issues too, so you
Right.
don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andre Haynes, if Nevada legislators passed a bill that gave you the choice to allow defendants to perform community service or pay fines, would you give defendants the choice?
Say that again.
If the legislator passed a bill that gave you as a judge the right to give defendants the choice to either pay fines or perform community service for their crimes, would you extend them the choice?
Yes. Yes. In fact, I think there's already is that.
It's already there.
Yeah. Yeah, because we give, we'll say the fine is $350.
Or you could donate food too.
Yeah, $350 or the equivalent
Right.
in community service, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick, one more.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
State
You're
your
talking
name,
about,
please.
Rob Lauer, you're talking about allowing people to walk out of jail on bail. One of the issues that's been introduced is sanctuary laws, where an illegal alien commits, allegedly commits a crime, is arrested, and they are being allowed, in many cases, to walk out once they post bail. What's your position on whether someone who has been accused, arrested, detained by police, is an illegal alien? Would you allow them to walk out if they post bail?
Usually there's an IRS hold right away, or not an
Well,
IRS.
well,
The judge has to answer that, please. Thank you.
there are people, and I'll have them come in, and usually I have a note from the corrections officers that come in, and they'll say there's an ice hold. And but I do not ask people if they're legally in the country. So I just treat everybody the same. If there's some indication, there's an ice hold or whatever, it's like, I'll tell the person, my concern when I deal with that is I'm never gonna see them again. They're never gonna have to pay for the violation that they did. They've done something and they're not gonna have to pay for it. They're gonna go back home to their home and get away with what they did here. That's my bigger concern when in that situation.
So their immigration status doesn't play into whether you will allow them bail?
Well, I don't know their immigration status. That's the thing. I don't know, so I don't consider it because I don't know
Do
it.
you consider them a flight risk if they don't have a driver's license or some kind of identification?
I do, yeah, and that goes into the consideration whether they're going to come back into court. If it's somebody that lives down the street from the courthouse and has lived there for 15 years, I know they're going to come back. And if they, a couple of issues that come up regularly are they have no driver's license and, where do you live? I have to go upon where they live. And frankly, people are pretty honest when you ask them those kind of questions, and they'll let me know, and they'll say, I live well, nobody says I live in Mexico, other than people that have a visa. But they'll say I live in California, I live in Texas. I said, well, how will I know that you will come back for the trial on this charge? And then we set bail to assure that they're gonna come back, or at least cover what they normally would have to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, panelists, and I'd like to have Judge Miller give a closing statement. I'll give you 1 minute if you'd like.
All right.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, because we're veterans in politics, let me talk a little bit about veterans if I can. That's an important thing that we do in our court too, is to deal with veterans. I had a veteran in just on Thursday who is he's someone who's on a scramble. I may take more than a minute. He's
At your discretion, sir.
He's on a scram bracelet. He had violations, and so I brought him in. I said, you need to come in for an order to show cause hearing why I shouldn't put you back in jail based upon your bail, or based upon your ability to post bail. In our discussion, I learned that he's a veteran. He's a combat veteran. He's having problems, and then his family, his parents, were there to speak up for him and the things that he's going through. And so, there are things I told him, look, I can't do anything for you right now because we're pre-trial. So I don't even have a complaint yet. And the city attorney is gonna wait until you get a complaint filed, or until he gets the blood work back from the lab before he'll file a complaint. So we're probably gonna be another couple months before I get a complaint. But in the meantime, I'm gonna set your file over here on the side, and I'm going to talk with Judge Stevens in Henderson in his vet's court, because you look like a good candidate for him. And then he's got this program, and frankly, if you get through his program, this charge can go away. And he'll have a mentor there, someone else that has been through what you've been through, and we can deal with these issues. I said, in the meantime, I've had good success with people that go to the VA. He says, well, I go there and they just give me pills. And in fact, he says, that was the problem. I wasn't even drinking with this, but they gave me this bottle of pills and I took the whole, one wasn't enough, so maybe 10 would be better. And I said, go back and tell the doctor you don't want pills, you want some counseling, because they have some really good counselors over there. And so in dealing with veterans, there's some special needs, or special abilities that we have, some special programs and some special concerns that we have for them. Other than that, we have the Veterans Cemetery in Boulder City. When they built the cemetery to provide for services, they had a 15 by 15 gazebo. And as you know, like today, the wind's blowing 30 miles an hour, and if you're trying to hold a service for someone who's gone and sacrificed for our country in the wind when it's 30 degrees or 110, it's just not pleasant. So a group of us got together, we started an organization called Operation Godspeed, and we raised the money to build the chapel out there. It was like $4 million. It was not easy. I went to so many veterans organization meetings and sold bricks for $20 to raise that money. But now we have is, I think, the busiest cemetery, at least in the West Coast, if not in the country. And it is so busy. We got that beautiful chapel. But if you go there, you get 20 minutes because it's busy all day long at 20-minute intervals. But I'm proud that we've got that facility now. Anyway, thank you very much for letting me come here and talk to you about what I do.
Thank you, Judge.